Okay, and why won't the Republicans support if they don't? Intact, it seems from what I'm reading, it seems that it's unlikely that the bill as stated,
Sure, it won't go. No.
Yeah, there will be some amendments. It's political. Is race a factor? We talk about the elephant in the room.
I mean, yes and no. I mean, I would obviously, there's no secret that America has a history it has. I think, however, to attempt to argue that is a difficult argument because anyone's going to say, well, that's not true. So the reality is, what you can argue specifically is politics. And when you mention George Bush's TARP bill, I think it's hilarious that you've got TARP that was passed under President Bush. We've got all these tax breaks. I got a rebate. I got a $1,500 check from George Bush, which I bought a computer with. I actually named my computer Bush, by the way, because I was so grateful for that. But here's what happened. Obama comes in and runs the exact same policies. All the people who were complaining about, oh, we're spending too much money, said nothing about when Bush did the same exact thing, the stimulus plan. And so what I see, what is very tangible, what's very real, what can be argued, is there's a clear difference in policy and politics. And when a Democrat does something for a certain part of the world, it's bad. If it, you know, and that's the way politics works.
So do you all think that earlier we talked about, before the taping, we talked about low-income individuals and how often that specific group is left out of the discussion. Yesterday, President Obama gave an address on network TV, and there was no, I don't recall a mention for specifically about low-income earning individuals, but middle class, and then that against high earning individuals. Why are we left? Why do we leave that part? We had the debate about middle class. What makes middle class, right?
Well, it's not me. I did the math.
Thank you. And she's not an economist, but she did some very good math on that, right?
Right.
Personal economist.
Personal economist. But that just doesn't settle well with me because...
Well, can I take this?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, I just wanted to say, I feel like we have some sort of illusion in the United States where we live in a dream, right? This American dream where you can be rich, right? You can be a part of that 1%, or you're middle class. And people don't actually realize that they're not necessarily middle class and they're not necessarily that 1% rich. The majority, large numbers of us are working class and are making far less than what many other Americans are making.
And so, do we even know what middle class means now?
No.
Is it very loosely, honestly, when we say middle class, what does that mean?
I have no idea. I know it means it's not me. And so I can tell you that as far as me, I don't make 100,000, you know. To me, it just feels as if I agree with you. When you read the jobs plan, you hear the conversation, you're hearing all these great terms that are coming across the TV screen, you know, and they're good hooks to grab everyone's attention, middle class. But I think at the end of the day, the jobs bill is really not about the person, and I think that's where the delusion comes in at. It's like, it's kind of like dealing with a honey badger. Okay, this honey badger really does not care. It's about the policy. It's about making those deals to keep another stream of income coming in. When I look at the jobs bill and I say, I tell people when you're going into politics, you should always think of yourself first. I really do. What's in it for me? I'm reading the jobs bill. I'm like, what's in it for me? I know that if you owned a small business, you could get, if you hire a veteran, you could get a tax credit from $5,600 to $9,600. Roger that. What do I get out of the bill? I can get a $4,000 tax credit. No, that other company can get a $4,000 tax credit for hiring an employee, but the most that I can get out of it is $2,000. And it doesn't really make it, it's not really about the person still. It's not. And until there's some reality about, is it about the person? Is it about the livable wage? I have a huge problem with always wanting to create jobs. Are we creating jobs or are we creating careers?
That's a good
but
point.
When you're
but
trying
it does
to survive,
include job creation as well, just to be fair to the,
and it's going
you know.
Right, exactly. It's going to support more teachers to guard them from being laid off, and police officers.
Yeah. So which I think are very important given the climate. This is very important given the climate that we're in.
It is. But for example, let's look at the Ford here in Illinois, in Chicago, south side of Chicago, right? South suburbs. 1,000 jobs, I believe, were announced, right? But from a very reliable source at Ford, I was told that half of those positions are going to be offered to rehires, for rehires. So when we hear 1,000 jobs are available, it is
like a shell game.
Right,
But-
exactly. And so
but on the flip side, though,
at least there will be 500 more available,
Sure.
but not completely 1,000, and that is a
right,
difference.
But here's the deal: I fully agree with you on that. But at the end of the day, once again, this goes back to the original question: is it the president's job? Is it the president's job to create jobs? And the reality is that the president doesn't necessarily create jobs, long term at least. The president creates conditions. If you look at the boom, the
When
economic
you say
boom.
conditions, do you mean proposals?
Sure. No, I mean conditions for the economy to flourish.
Okay.
The right kind of regulation, the right kind of tax incentives, those sorts of things. If you look at the boom of the 90s, the economic boom of the 90s, Bill Clinton can't take full credit for that, okay? He really just had to get out of the way because you had Silicon Valley and they were growing, and literally the government just had to be in a situation where they did not mess it up. So we want the president to create jobs. The president can do what they can, the government can, but really small businesses, larger businesses, medium-sized businesses are really the engines, as we talked about. And so we've got to be in a situation, this is why I think part of the bill is very good, because it does give those kinds of incentives for businesses to do that.
And so, Edward, what are your thoughts about a double dip recession? We hear that, we're hearing it. Do you have an opinion either way?
Well, one of the things I think that we really need to look at and consider when we talk about just the present state of our economy and even the president creating jobs is that we really need to look at ways to create more jobs here in the United States where we develop products made in America for Americans to use in America, right? And I think this is a very interesting point, which can save us from a double dip recession, which can save us from so many problems in the future, especially this trade imbalance that we have now with China. Right, so how can we really move away from that? There was a piece, there's an ongoing piece on ABC News actually, where they have a piece on Made in America is what they call it, right? And I guess it was some time ago they were talking about college students going back to school in the fall who actually contribute $46 billion to the economy. When college students go back to school, they contribute $46 billion to the U.S. economy. And if they purchased items that were made in the United States, they could add 500,000 permanent jobs to the U.S. economy. So this is a pretty interesting point if we look at this. Things that are manufactured in the United States for Americans to use in the United States.
And the trade balance issue is a perfect example of how the government can steer policy,
and create conditions.
Yeah, create conditions. So NAFTA is a great example of this, which was passed under Bill Clinton, which did provide for the conditions for jobs to leave. And we saw what happened there. And we've got to look back at looking at readopting some level of protectionist policies to make sure that we are in a situation, 80% of our economy is the service sector now. We don't make things in this country. And we purchase from outside of the country. You make a very good point. I just think that as we're looking at what the government can do, let's try to create the conditions where we can provide and create more goods in the country and then be able to export those.
Yeah, but I think that takes a concerted effort. I think it is a symphony of remedies that has to be pieced together. It's kind of like I envision, if the president would sit down at the table and say, okay, this is how we're going to create jobs. I need education sitting at the table. I need social welfare sitting at the table. I need the Department of Treasury sitting at the table. And you have all of these key figures sitting at the table to say, okay, this is your role. This is where I'm going to pick up the ball. This is your role. This is where I'm going to pick up the ball. Because other than that, it's just one more incident. You know what I'm saying? It's just one more attempt, and it's not a concerted effort. When you talk about, is it class warfare? Well, on this side of the line, it certainly does feel like class warfare because if someone say, well, the poor, we'll say, okay, well, at least they're eligible for some type of additional assistance. But I'm in a I'm in a home where my husband is no longer employed. we could use an additional $200 or $300 for groceries, but guess what? I'm not eligible. So it becomes, it's like, where are the symphony of remedies? I want my husband to get a job, but in the meantime, what else can I qualify for in order to make life better? And it's not happening. That's the problem that I have with it.
And I think that's why Obama's
So
approach,
let's go with final thoughts then. Let's tie that into
Sorry.
final
No, it's
thoughts.
okay.
No, that'll lead into it. Yes, Edward.
I would say that I agree with the panel on many issues. We do need to have some concerted efforts to create conditions to build our economy, to rebuild our economy, to create new jobs, to have a flourishing economy for years to come. It shouldn't just be about individual things and individual tasks, but it must be about a connected, concerted effort.
Okay, great. Final thoughts. Sian.
I guess just say with my final thoughts is just that it's a phenomenal time to be a student. It's a phenomenal time to pay attention. And one of the things is I always try to bring it back into the classroom to convey to the students, okay, this is what you're accountable for. This is what you're responsible for. But this is what someone else is accountable for. But how do you hold them accountable? You should always look at legislation and say, what does that mean for me in my current circumstances?
Yes.
I would say that we have to get beyond political rhetoric. We have to see how really in substance most presidential policies over the past 20 years in terms of the economy have actually been relatively similar. President Obama is not as left-leaning as the right wants to make him when it comes to this with his solutions for these issues. And so the symphony idea is a very good idea because there are a myriad of solutions to these things, and there are a myriad of problems that have gotten us to this point. We've got to do both. We've got to do a bunch of things, and I think that I'm actually excited about the President's job plan, although I don't know that it'll pass as it stands, but these are the things that we have to do to change our economy, and as you say, it's a very exciting time. I think that we will get there. I hope we do.
Okay, great. Well, thank you all.
Thank you.
Okay. We've talked about what a president can do or what a president should do, but with President Obama's American Jobs Act, we can read what our president will do, or at least what he will try to do. I encourage everyone to visit AmericanJobsAct.com and think for themselves about the president, job creation, and the economy. It's part of a conversation we'll have for years to come. For the professors, I'm Temple Hemphill.